Howdy, website designers. This is our last lecture for this course here CS 252 in spring 2021. And what I thought we'd do in this last lecture is kind of add the final control that CSS brings to our HTML web pages in the form of kind of macroscopic layout. So we're going to take a look at that. And once again, I'm unabashedly taking some of this material from the W3 School's website for HTML and CSS. Some people say they are not the most advanced or up-to-date website, but they are kind of the standard bearers for website technologies and that sort of thing. And they've got a lot of courses. They've got everything from Python and JavaScript, which we didn't get into in this course, but JavaScript is a programming language so that you can embed programs in your websites and actually calculate things and draw things and do all sorts of programmatic things, as opposed to just placing content on the page and that sort of stuff. Although that's pretty programmatic, as you've seen, you have a lot of control over that. The other thing that we didn't cover in this course, because it's another advanced kind of technology for us, is it's very common with websites, as I think I said way back at the beginning, for a website to be connected to other business applications, business computer applications, things like databases particularly. So if you are looking for information, library searching or resource searching, having a database with a lot of information in it is great, and your web page can have searches and that sort of thing. And you would have some kind of, through either HTML forms as a start, that just kind of gives you text boxes where the user can type things they're looking for, or that sort of thing, through JavaScript, which is as I said, kind of a programming language. It's a programming language for writing functions that you can embed into a web page, and they can help the user do things on that web page. But one of these other things that you want to do is typically through a program like PHP, you may want to access a database. And so PHP offers the kind of power to do that. It's very, very classical thing in a web page. The people that serve the web pages out will use a product like LAMP, MAMP, or WAMP. I think we talked about them. They are Linux, Apache, I forgot what the M is for, but the P is PHP. And so they offer you the kinds of database and PHP programming back end for websites. So if you had a web server, you might well run LAMP, like for Linux, or WAMP for Windows, or MAMP for Mac OS. And that machine that you run it on it serves out web pages and can be contacted via the internet, presumably via the World Wide Web, or not presumably, but actually via the World Wide Web. Your machine is then a web server, if you will, and it this is what businesses have been built on. And that's, now the web servers are distributed where there are multiple web servers across the country for big companies, so that you can you can access Amazon or whoever, Walmart.com or WebMD from all over the country, and you don't have to go all to one place in St. Louis or New York or San Francisco or something like that. They actually duplicate their databases and maintain multiple web servers where you can get to their information from all over the country or all over the world. So, and I don't know why it's escaping me. The M part of the LAMP, WAMP, and MAMP series is just just not available to me right now. But it's oh well. But it has to do with providing a web server database and the access on the website. We've been designing web pages and then just testing them by viewing them in our web browser. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we haven't done any web server type stuff. So just kind of reminding you that there's JavaScript and PHP and LAMP, WAMP, and MAMP out there. There's another one called XAMPP. I guess that's supposed to run on anything. That's what the X is. That's kind of what that is. But we want to take a look. The farthest we're going to go in this course is we did HTML, and an important statement here. HTML is for formatting content, putting content on a web page. That's what HTML is for. CSS is for laying out that content. And so even though up through HTML4, we're now using HTML5, up through HTML4, people tended to wrap the layout information into their HTML code. You can imagine that that's not really the greatest way to do things, because if you want to change the layout information, you've got all sorts of HTML code and many files of HTML. If you want to change the look and feel of something, you've got to go search through all those files, see how they are formatted with this sort of formatting that's inside of HTML, and then edit that and test it all and access it all and prove that it's all good, and then you cut it over and you say, okay, there's our new website. But that's A, error prone, and B, especially expensive and complicated, and very hard to maintain. It's hard to hire programmers for that, because you'll have to have some people that know your website, all the quirks and all that kind of thing. So it's really not efficient. Somewhere in the midst, I think it was, of HTML4, people said, okay, we'll do this cascading style sheets, and we'll make it so you can pull whatever formatting you had in HTML out into a separate file, a CSS file. And you've seen us, we've done that, and so you've seen the mechanism of how it works. And then you get this advantage where, in a perfect world, it's still going to be difficult, but you have all your content in HTML files, and the people that maintain your content can maintain those files. And the people that maintain the look and feel of your website can maintain the CSS files. And if you merge with another company and you want to sort of have the banner at the top for the new company, well, you can do that, and you can reformat a lot of your website without touching any of the content. or maybe there's been updates in new products, or everybody says, we've got to change our colors. Everybody's going with colors of a certain class and everything, and we're looking kind of old-fashioned with the colors we have. So can we change the color scheme, the palette, if you will, on our website? And yeah, you can. And if you've coded it well, then you can change it in some CSS files, and it's easier to test, and you have more confidence in it, less errors, and easier to change. So so at any rate, I just wanted to mention that stuff. So what we're going to talk about here is I'm going to show you some examples of some CSS layouts, and we're going to talk about the bigger structures of layout that you can formulate in CSS, and hopefully I can also point out some of the places on the web. Although I may have to do that in a separate document because I'm not sure I can lay my hands on them right at the moment. There are places on the web that have these kind of pre-cooked just CSS layouts. So you'd look at them and you'd say, oh, that one's great for a blog, or that one's great for a calendar for the institution, or that one's great for a club, and so. Whatever you're doing on your web pages, there are a lot of people that are doing similar things out there, and so you may find something in CSS that allows you to define these things. If you'll remember, in HTML we did table-driven layout earlier on. And that's kind of a pain because, like I said, it's buried in the HTML, and you have to read it and look at it and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on there, and now we need to change it, or add a row for a new thing or something. So with CSS, we can keep that structure in a separate file, and just kind of call the HTML stuff to be where it will. So let's take a look. So like I said, this will be our last lecture here, May 10th through 16th, I think, because tomorrow might be the last day of school. Today is Monday the 10th, so 10th, 11th, 12th, maybe Wednesday is the last day of school. So let's get on with this macro layout in CSS, and we'll have a homework exercise in it. We'll take the 22 greatest programmers, and you can manipulate them and stick them in one of these macro layouts. And if you demonstrate that you successfully put some stuff in a macro layout, you will succeed. The most important thing is to get the idea that CSS doesn't just change colors and fonts and padding and margins and that kind of stuff. It also can block out areas of the website and lay out major, like I say, macro blocks of content that so you can format them separately in the CSS file. I'm going to go to a screenshot I have here. This, and here, let me, again, this is stolen from the W3 School's HTML and CSS tutorial. And in here, this person has created a blog style macro layout. You can see there's there's these sort of structures up above here, and here there's a bunch of links in here, sort of a toolbar or something like that. And anyway, so you kind of see some of the major layout stuff that that you can put, and this could be anything, but this could be the key people in a corporation have a About Us website or something, some About Us web pages, or who are the leaders at XYZ Corporation, and they could have it there, whatever. I'm sure you're sensitive to some of the styles you see out there as you look at websites, and you should be. Click around, see what you see out there, and you'll pick up the gist of what web designers are doing, and what's considered attractive and appropriate, and that sort of thing. So I close that down, and I'm going to go to the place where I keep a lot of this stuff. And of course, this stuff will be posted with the lecture. Excuse me. So, this is, this is even more general purpose. This is the and I put the website here, and I think I have this done also for the one I just showed you. But CSS has names for these various sections of web pages, and they don't all have to have this shape. That's the point, is you can vary the number of columns and how wide they are. You can have a footer or not have a footer. This is the one of the most common, I guess. There are tons of different layout designs to choose from. However, the structure above is one of the most common. We'll take a closer look at it in this tutorial. That's the words of the W3 schools. So obviously this makes sense. You have a header, maybe a navigation bar of some kind, and this is your main content, but you may have links to current news items about the company or something over here, and over here is new product announcement, the kind of stuff that you see on the sides of web pages, and in the middle here is the main content about XYZ Corporation or whatever it is they do. And these structures, like I said, they can be different. Here's one. Well, let's see. This one is variations. Like I said, you can have 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns. You can even have unequal columns. And this vocabulary on this page is important, and you'll see it in the CSS files, that it defines things. And I say you see it in the CSS files. In this tutorial, they do a lot of embedding this into the HTML files, which, after my great speech, is kind of counterproductive. But these are small examples, and it's easy to see it that way. But I'm hoping that you understand that all the CSS stuff can be taken out and put in a separate file, and then we have that link statement up in the header that tells the web page where to go get its styles. Otherwise, the styles are being provided. If you remember correctly, we had inline, internal, and external styles. If you can put the stuff in a CSS file, that's external. If you put it in the head section of your web page, that's an internal style. And if you just strew the style attributes, the style attributes with their parameters and values, if you strew those through your HTML code, that's inline. And inline is probably the one we want to avoid the most. it happens, people do quick fix-ups, or it's maybe the right thing to do once in a while. But we'd really like to have everything be separated out and as maintainable as possible. And that gets into all sorts of artistic arguments and this sort of thing, but the code is supposed to be good enough that one should be able to avoid a lot of artistic arguments, because the HTML code and the CSS code are both powerful enough for someone to express things the way they'd like. Okay, so there's the most common layout structure, and what did I do with that other one? Let me see. No, this is 0, 1. And 0, 2 is this one. Yeah, okay. So this is the one we just talked about. It has multiple columns, and you get to define that. Then you can see one column often used for mobile browsers. You don't want to crowd up a cell phone with, tiny columns and that sort of thing. So you get the gist as you look at this stuff. So I'm going to take those out for a second and look at some HTML code, which has the layout information in it. One last time, the best way to do it is to put the HTML is for content, CSS is for layout, and to the extent that's humanly possible, we ought to separate those and maintain them separately. So religious speeches are now over. So here's a simple header. And this is not the same as head. This is header. It's a bit of vocabulary that we want to have. And let me take all of these and open them in my text editor. Now, I think we can get rid of some of the welcome guide stuff. Then this is the first one. This is the header, and we have an HTML file here. Get rid of that. We have an HTML file, and it has some information here. The star. That means that's a selector, because we're in a style. This is internal styles. Instead of having a .css file up in the head section of our web page, we have a style, and of course we go down here, we're going to have a /style. And survey says there it is, /style, 110 lines down. So that whole thing from style to /style could have been in a .css file. I'm just grabbing and slightly modifying files from W3 schools. So star means any class or any item, paragraphs, whatever, will have a their box sizing will be the size of a border box. There's a parameter and there's a value. The entire body section of the web page will use the font family Arial, the padding. Remember we talked about margins and padding. And the background color is hexadecimal, F1, F1, F1. So, 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 now we define, here we go, we have a class definition, .header. So our website will be able to grab a thing that can be formatted called a header. And we say .header, the padding will be 30 pixels, the text align will be in the center, and the background will be white. And here we have in a .header, if there's an H1 heading, that font size will be 50 pixels. So then we have other things here. This top nav is part of the navigation bar. Here's web links in the top nav. See the A? Remember the way we do web links in HTML is there's the less than sign A space href equals quote www dot blah 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 enter quotes right greater than sign, then some text which is the actual link text, and then after the link text there's a closing tag which is less than sign / A greater than sign. So that stuff is all formatted here. You can see top A. You can even, if you hover, see A : hover. This is I think called a pseudo selector. And this in the top nav bar, if you hover over an A, its background color will change, and the color of the text will turn to black. And here we've created something called a left column and a right column, fake image, card, row. So the footer you've seen, and then when the screen is less than 800 pixels wide, you might pick up a hint here that people were beginning with the CSS stuff and HTML, they're beginning to think about, well, we have to have a website that looks good in a mobile situation and a website that looks good in a say desktop laptop situation. So that's what this at media screen stuff is about. And then we have the end of the style, and we come down here and we say class equals header. Well, that means the .header stuff is going to apply. We have a level 1 header called level 1 heading called my website. So we have three things. We have a head section in an HTML file. We have headings, H1, H2, H3 through H6 of so you can put titles throughout things. And then we have a header. This is the new thing we just introduced, which is one of these macro components. It's some kind of bar that goes maybe across the top of the web page and helps to organize the information, and the first thing people see or something like that. So the header one here is my website, and there's a paragraph here, resize the browser window to see the effect. So you'll see how the how everything on the page resizes. And then we have a division, okay? Oh, I'm sorry. I was in a division called header. And so that division ended. Now I'm in a division called top nav. And they put in these links don't have anything behind. They don't actually go anywhere. They're they just put pound signs there. And they showed that there's link A, there's links, 3 links there named link, and so on and so forth. And, we won't go through this entire thing on this go-round, but you can see that they are, in the HTML file, We're in the body section now, right? We're done with the styling. We're in the body section, and we have a header. We have a top nav or navigation bar. We have a division class called a row. We have a division class called a left column that's defined within the row. We have a division class called a card, and these things are, these things are added in and populated, and divisions are basically sections of the web page, and that's one of the most important things in this macro formatting is to look at these divisions and see how they're coming out. So this is the one that ends in 005. I really should have started with 001. Look how much simpler that is. So with 001, I put comments in these to tell you where they were stolen from. All right. So we have HTML lang equals English. Here's our head section, and within head there's some styling. And the body has a margin of 0, and then there's this thing called a header, and it has this funny color. The padding is 20 pixels, and the alignment is center. And then we're done with the style section, we're done with the head section, we have the body section, and the only thing we have is we have a beginning of division, end of division, and that division is of class header, which is defined by this stuff, and it has a level 1 heading in it called header, and that's it. And so that's the one you saw when I double clicked on the one that ends in 0001. There it is. All we have is a header. We don't even really have the rest of the page, and I don't think we'll see anything interesting here. That's as far as I can shrink that anyway. So let's look at number 2, and again, let's look at the code first. And in number 2, again, we're beginning to bring in things. It says style, box sizing, and border box. The thing you can do is you can go out and Google, CSS Space Box Sizing with a dash in there, and it'll tell you. Why don't we do that just so you can see how to do this stuff. If I go CSS box dash sizing, and of course W3 School is one of the first ones. So the CSS box sizing property allows us to include the padding and border in an element's total height and width, and they'll show you without the property and with the property. So this explains the size of the padding and border and width, how they add up to the actual size of the element, and the same thing in the vertical direction. This means when you set the width and height of an element, the element often appears bigger than you have set, because the element's border and padding are added to the element's specified height and width. Here's things with the same text, but and the same height and width, but there's other padding involved. Okay, so if you look at this code, the div1 class is 300 pixels, 100 pixels, and the border's 1 pixel. If you look at the div2 class, and div1 has no padding, div2 is 300 and 100 on the width and height, but the padding is 50 pixels and the border is 1. So you see this extra 50 pixels around this, around all this stuff, and that pushes out where the actual div begins, or division begins and ends. So anyway, so this star selector is a wildcard. Like we said before, it means this box sizing applies to everything, every HTML object. Right? Now, the body of our website will have a margin of 0. We'll have a header like we had before, without my funny color. It's going to be their color. We'll have a top nav bar, overflow hidden, background color 333. So we'll see what that looks like. Blue. I think one would think that's going to be bluish. And then the top nav links, that's top nav A. So A is for all the A tags inside of a top nav, they'll behave like this. And when you hover over an A link, it will change as specified here. And we can see, I went ahead and actually put links in there just for the fun of it. And they're called link 1, link 2, link 3. You can see that. So if I go and I click on header 02 navbar, there's the header. Now they don't have my maroon color, they have their gray color. But this guy here is a navbar, and it has 3 links in it. And if I hover over them, you can see the background goes light and the text goes from white to dark. So it helps to identify. You can tell where you are. Now this should take us to Firefox, and it does. We can go back, and so you get the idea. If you know about these top nav type things, you can if you know about header and top nav and that sort of thing, and divisions in general, you can start to build the macroscopic layout of your web page. Furthermore, if you have this information, again, we have a style and end style tags, and we're using internal CSS, but we could link to a file with this in there. And we could go, and change what we see, or we could change this color scheme, and it would change for every page that uses, this header and nav bar. And so you can imagine there are websites that have some kind of theme like this, where there's a header and a nav bar, and it goes through several different pages. We would only have to change one file to change the colors and fonts and hover behavior for that header and nav bar. And anytime you can consolidate like that and maintain a smaller entity, logic says you make less mistakes. So I've done CSI 25260 under CSS layout under 0001, 0002. Let's look at 0003 and see what it has. So a lot of this is familiar now, and then we're going to add columns and rows. So here we have again, internal styling. We have a style and end style tags here. And we're using this border box sizing for everything that for every element, HTML element we have. The body is again at margin 0, and the what we should do is, why don't we just take a second? What is that asterisk selector? CSS Asterisk Selector. The CSS Asterisk Selector selects all elements and sets their background color to yellow. That's because this one says background color yellow. So you can do a lot of other things, but when there's some formatting you want to apply to every element, every HTML element. The star is what you use. Okay, so let's go back here. So we're looking at the star and the body. We've seen those before. The header, the top nav with a link, the top nav with a link, and hovering over it. And now we add a couple more things. What will happen with this? Three things here we're going to look at. The dot column will float left. They'll have a width of 1/3 of the screen with a padding of 15 pixels. So the row has this after pseudo selector here, and the content is apparently nothing, and the display is a table format, and I'm not even sure what these things are. We'll take a look at that, but this next one is one that's really important. And this term responsive layout makes the 3 columns stack on top of each other instead of next to each other. So screen and max width of 600 pixels, dot column width 100%. So let's see what combining these two things does. These three, dot column, dot row after, and the @media screen. So I'm going to go over here, and now we see side by side we have 3 columns, and they just have the lorem ipsum stuff in there. But let's see what happens when we shrink this down. Notice when I go below 600 pixels, this now stacks on top of each other. All right, and that's something that would be great. There's a format that fits phones better than it does laptops, and so you want to be sensitive. You want to reach your customers whether they're on their phone walking around town or whether they're in their office working on their laptop. So that's what this particular these 3 things right here do. And if we look at let's look at this dot row after stuff here. I'm going to take this, put it back to what it was, but let's do CSS. I'm going to put in quotes just so it doesn't get changed in some way. Dot row colon after. And let's see, where's the... Actually, I want to do this using the W3 schools. Here we go. How to create a 2-column layout. So, a regular division will create this big box here, right? And then it says div column end of div class column end of div. So we're going to create 2 divs that both are columns. So let's take a look. We're going to do it. Let's do their examples here. Try it yourself. And what they have is this is, see if I can, yeah. Okay, just so you can see the text better in the video. Here we are in the style part of the header, and everything gets box sizing set to border box. And we have a column has the float left property. Its width is 50%, so because we plan to have 2 of them. Padding is 10 pixels and the height is 300 pixels. And this is here just, it says just for demonstration. This is that row after part. It says content, empty quotes, display table, clear both, and then we have end of style. So let's see what they're saying about this. Here's two equal columns, and there they are. And I don't know if I can shrink these down. See, they're never going to jump on top of each other. They just keep shrinking. All right. So let's go down here a little further and then do the float example. Again, our columns have the float left 50%, and then they have the row after, which this guy did not have. Display table and clear both. So if we try this one and I squeeze it down, it still doesn't stack on top of each other. But the so we still have yet to figure out what the row after selector does, or I should say pseudo selector, because it comes after a colon. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to get rid of our earlier examples. Now they mentioned something else which I have not actually used yet, but a modern way of creating 2 columns is to use a CSS Flexbox. However, it is not supported in Internet Explorer 10 and earlier versions, so you'd have to be using, I guess, Internet Edge or something like, Edge or Chromium. But they have a chapter here at W3 Schools. You can read about the Flexbox. And you just tell the column flex 50%. And I wonder what it does. I haven't tried it yet. But it's certainly flexible. It stays equal. Okay. Clear floats after the column. So let's see what this thing is all about now. Here they finally explain to us. Well, here they create 2 unequal columns just by changing those percentages, right? And you can see they stay at 75-75%, no matter how wide you make it. But the row after, I should have figured this out before I started recording, but I don't know what it is, and we will find it together. So here are these examples, but we have another example in their thing here where they actually do that was the box sizing property. Here we go. They have the media screen. Responsive layout when the screen is less than 600 pixels wide make the two columns stack on top of each other instead of next to each other. So media screen and max width is 600 pixels. It says here dot column. So let's see what their example does. Now they have a section up here with a level 2 header. It says resize the window to see the responsive layout effect. And there you can see it must have gone under 600 pixels because they stacked. And here they have the row after attribute. Now, if I were to get rid of the row after attribute, so if I did something like this, I wonder what would happen. Oops, sorry. So we run that, and then as we squeeze this thing, so I'm still not sure what the row after effect does. Of course, some of you probably already know. Maybe you've experienced this before. So I'll uncomment it anyway. It didn't seem to affect our responsive layout where things stacked on top of each other when it got narrow. So somewhere here I was trying to find the row after type stuff. I think we can get rid of a lot of this. Two column layout, they don't really. It is up to you if you want to use floats or flex to create a two column layout. However, if you need support for Internet Explorer 10 and down, you should use float. So we've had CSS Float before, and I should know exactly what it is. So what do? We go to our old friend Google, and we go CSS Float left, CSS Float and clear. CSS Float Properties specifies how an element should float. Wow. I'd have never thought that. But here, we did this in an earlier exercise, though, and we had things float left and float right. The CSS clear property specifies what elements can float beside the cleared element and on which side. So I guess the clear property allows things to float side by side. So the float property can have one of the following values. Left, the element floats to the left of its container. And that's a div for us, that container usually. The element floats to the right of its container with right. The element does not float, will display just where it occurs in the text. This is default. Inherit, the element inherits the float value of its parent. I guess if you have a container within a container. And again, for us, the containers are divs or divisions. Dividers or something like that. In its simplest form, the float property can be used to wrap text around images. So if our image floats left, here's image float right, and if we want, we can change that to image floats left. All right, so there's all that kind of stuff. But why does our thing have float? What are we achieving here with float? I guess what we want is we want our text to float left within our column. Our column is a container. So create three equal columns that floats next to it. Three equal columns that floats. Three equal columns that float next to each other. So they float left. They're 33%. And so I guess now the row after we still haven't figured out, but the columns definitely float left. until it gets too small. And then this media screen and max screen width determines that the columns then become 100% wide, which means they have to stack. And you know, they jump to 100% width. Clear floats after the columns. So I guess row after says no content display table, whatever that is, and clear is both. It means get rid of the floats that existed after that row. So there you go. Clear as mud. When our example, no, not that one. In our example, here's our columns. If we had another row below this, or you know, and that row contained columns, the floating would be cleared. So if you wanted to reestablish the floating, you'd have to say float left, I guess, is the idea with those columns. All right, so I apologize for that confusion. We talked about unequal columns, and here you can see the columns on the sides are unequal. And when we get to a certain point, they stack just like before, because as we look at the code here, this is 0004, everything is pretty much the same. So the columns on the side are 25. So I have a column.side class, and that's 25%, and I have a column.middle class, and that's 50%. And so because these are subclasses, this column float left and padding of 10 pixels applies to all of them. And if we go down into the code, we'll see that the code says I have a division which is class row, and in that division is a column side, and you know, there's some information in there. Then there's a column middle, and then there's another column side. So you can get an idea how these things are formatted. The last one is that one, you know, this is when I first started discussing, and it's this is the one that was the blog style, layout. And I'll give the URL for this so that you can. You can find this on the W3 school's website. But here it's got a header. It says resize browser to see the effect. And we can resize the browser, in which case you can see the things stacked. And they were a little richer in formatting than, or layout than the other things were. We have some, I guess, what you call fake images here. They're not really images. They're just space set aside so you can see where an image would go. And that stuff is, so here's our style thing. Again, everybody gets border box sizing. And everything in the body is font family Arial. Padding is 10, and the background is this color here. The header is kind of what it was before, and inside of a header, if you have an H1, it gets a font size of 50 pixels. Top nav has these properties. Then you have the links, you have the hovering thing that's kind of neat. And then they create something called a left column, a right column, and a fake image and a card. So we have the row after to clear floats, and we have a responsive layout at 800 pixels for left column and right column, and 400 pixels for the top nav bar. All right. So here is the our first division is the header. My website, resize the browser to see the effect. End of division. So that's our first division. The next division is the top nav. That's the navigation bar. You can put whatever you want in for links, but we know that this has the styles defined up here in the internal style section with the hover, so that they will change color as you hover over them. And then it goes on to describe a division called a card, which has a title heading of H2, a description of H5, heading 2 and heading 5. Then there's a fake image division, which has a certain height. The width is determined by the division itself. That's the end of that division. Then there's some text, then there's some lorem ipsum stuff, and that's the end of the card. Now we define another card, very similar, and then that's the end of the division called a left column. All right. We start another division called a right column. It has a card of 100 pixels high. It has another card with 3 fake images in it, and it has a third within that right column. It has a third card, so there's 3 cards in the right column. And finally there's a footer class division with the word footer in it as a heading level 2. So let's look at it again. And as we go down here, we can see that we have 3 cards on the right column and 2 cards on the left column and a footer. And let's double check our code again. In the left column we have card, so we have 2 cards. In the right column we have card, and card. And the middle card, they just created this class, has 3 fake images in it. So if we look at this, yes, there are 3 fake images and they're stacked right on top of each other. And if we shrink this down to, there we go, 600 pixels, things stack on top of each other. But then I think something else happens when we get down to 400 pixels. That's as low as we go. Maybe 400 is our lowest. Maybe that's what it's saying, is you can't go below that. So let's look at this. Go back to our CSS section up here. And it said, responsive layout, when the screen is less than 400 pixels wide, make the navigation link stack. Okay. So if I go down here small enough, and I can't go any smaller. Maybe I can from this side. I just can't. I can't make this any smaller. Let's see if no, it doesn't work with zooming. So I can't make it smaller. There's a minimum imposed by my browser somehow. But if I could, these links would actually stack, which would make sense. That's something you'd want. And let's take a look at our links up in the header, because we have one link that's floated right, and these links are floated left. So let's see. Here's our top nav. Yeah, they took the last link and they put a style in line with it. We could have defined some A class subclasses, if you will, and just, you know, invoke them that way. We could have had like an A.L for left, you know, 3 A.Ls for left, and an A.R for right if we wanted to. So let's stop at that point, and then I think we'll do one more video to explain a little bit more about this stuff and see if I can go back and find out the stuff a little better. Okie doke. Great. There we go.